I'm a tech guy. I've worked for a long time as a computer programmer, and us tech guys can sometimes get a little echo chambery on certain subjects. I'm of the opinion that eventually smart contracts will rule the world, and that tends to be what I think about most of the time. Most of the people I talk to think like that as well. However, it's good to talk to people with a different perspective that are more practical and working on actual solutions to problems we see today rather than the ideal world where smart contracts are running everything. So I talked with Greg McMullen. He's a really smart guy and a lawyer and the executive director of the Interplanetary Database Foundation. So I encourage you to watch this one all the way through. He's got some really good things to say. Enjoy. All right, so the Interplanetary Database, that is a rather ambitious name. So could you go into kind of, first off, the high-level goals of your organization, and then after that we can kind of get into some implementation specifics.
Sure. So IPDB is two things. It's organization, not-for-profit, and soon to be a charity registered here in Germany. And it's also a blockchain database that we hope will be available for everyone and kind of go planetary scale and become a piece of internet infrastructure, which is kind of an ambitious goal to go with the ambitious name.
So on your website, you list kind of three ways that this is, that three different things you're working on for this technology. The thing that stuck out to me was the strong governance aspect. I was hoping that you could go into a little bit more detail. Your website states that blockchains have struggled with governance, which we all, of course, have seen if we've been following the cryptocurrency news. But then you state that the model that you want to go with starts with human involvement in existing laws rather than technocratic fixes, which kind of goes contrary to what a lot of blockchain people think. Could you go into a little bit more detail about that?
So ever since, I guess for a bit longer than this, but definitely ever since the DAO debacle, where a startup actually based here in Berlin as well launched a decentralized autonomous organization as an investment fund that kind of went sideways and caused the fork in Ethereum due to a bug in the smart contract code that ran the DAO. So ever since then, people have been thinking about how does governance work? How do we make sure that we're making good decisions? All of these projects set out the ways that people get involved, the way voting works within the system, the way we make sure that people don't misbehave, the way to incentivize good behavior. But really, these things aren't governance. These things are enforcement. What governance is the creation of those rules to begin with. So the discussion that goes into deciding what are the rules that we all want to play by. And I think that is a really inherently human discussion. We want to have humans be able to get involved to say, this isn't working. We need to make a change in the way the system works. And I know that people get a bit uncomfortable when politics and lawyers and uncertainty come into the equation. But I think it's right now better than the alternative of having hard and fast rules that we try and predict the future and ultimately always miss something.
So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the hard and fast rules, I'm assuming, since you mentioned the DAO, you're talking about smart contracts and that kind of thing. So are you just kind of throwing that out completely, or, I mean, how do you strike that balance about trusting humans and, automating some of the decision making?
So we want to sort of create a split between the technical aspect and the political aspect. Politics is inescapable, and I think we're starting to see that in a lot of blockchain projects, either running up against regulations or struggling internally to decide on things like how to do software upgrades with Bitcoin, where you wind up with different groups with different incentives, totally paralyzing the project for 2 years now, trying to decide on a path towards scale. So what we're trying to do is create a system where something is as close to immutable as possible as far as the technical side, but creating a framework where humans can come together and make decisions about things like how do we want the network to run, who do we want to be the validating nodes, uh, what policies do we want to have as far as allowing allowing awful things to be written to the database. Uh, when you start dealing with immutability, you automatically run the risk of things like people writing the classic example is child pornography, uh, or what happens under the European regulations for right to erasure, where people's personal data, they can withdraw consent to a company and then the company has to delete the data from their databases. It doesn't really sound like it's set up for a blockchain world, and we need a way to deal with that.
So that's a good transition. I probably should ask this question first, but so your organization, your foundation, you're not actually like creating a cryptocurrency per se. You're kind of, could you go into detail? You're just kind of developing the technology standards, or what are the practical applications of what you're building?
So the Interplanetary Database Foundation is a spin-off project from a private company called BigChainDB that's developing a blockchain database software. So what we did, rather than trying to take blockchain technology and scale it up, we looked at existing big data databases and said, these can handle internet scale already. Like Netflix is serving 1/3 of all of the bandwidth on the internet. Other companies are doing huge amounts as well. So how are they doing that? And we started looking at the databases that they were using, and then building the blockchain characteristics on top of that. So when we say blockchain, we don't necessarily mean a chain of blocks in the traditional way. We mean the attributes that people like about blockchains, but built into a big data database. So we've decided to make a public implementation of the BigChainDB software, and that's IPDB.
Okay, so is it something, is it, what is the licensing on it? Is it open source? Can anybody use it?
It's open source. It's AGPL, so you can download it. You can fire up your own instance of it. You can put together your own foundation if you don't like the way that IPDB is doing things. But the main work here that IPDB is doing is creating this governance framework and bringing together the organizations that are the members of the organization and will be running the nodes. Groups like the Internet Archive, like IPFS, the Interplanetary File System, which was kind enough to let us join their interplanetary club. Not an official club, but like Open Media that does net neutrality activism. So organizations like that that have a real vested interest in the future of the internet and keeping things open.
So for the big data people watching, what is the advantage of using a blockchain style database over, like you said, Netflix? That's a good example. What they have seems to be working pretty well. What's the advantage of using this technology?
So for a lot of people, there probably isn't an advantage. When you start adding on the overhead that it takes to give these blockchain characteristics to the database, you start losing some of the efficiencies that make these databases so great. So if you don't have cause for using a blockchain, you're just running a really crappy database. But if you do have call for it, then that's when it starts to be useful. If you need to do things like creating assets and transferring assets, if you want to do tamper resistance or some level of immutability, if you want to have truly decentralized control, rather than having each node in the database have kind of full access to the database, that's when something like this would start to be useful for you.
Great. So, so what are you guys working on now, and what is kind of your roadmap for the future?
So on the software side, BigChainDB just shipped its 1.0 release candidate. So it's moving towards something that can really support production. And as soon as 1.0 comes out, that's what we're going to be running on the IPDB test network, which is up and running right now for invited users. We've got a wait list available for that, so people can come and sign up, and we will hopefully get them on that soon. And we're moving towards having a production-ready network for select users again by the fall. On the organizational kind of political side, that is even slower than the technology at this point. The wheels of bureaucracy move quite slowly, and I think Germany just adds another layer on top of that. I'm a lawyer in Canada, and I thought that bureaucracy was frustrating there, but I hadn't seen anything. So that's still moving along. We formed, like I said, we formed an organization. We're still working on getting charitable status. We're hoping to have that done in the next couple of months.
Yeah, so I know it can be a bit frustrating, but could you get into the political aspect of it a little bit? How are you guys working with Germany per se?
Sure. So coming back to the advantages of using kind of traditional legal frameworks, I like to put it in a way that that tech people can understand. This is a legal system that's been used in production for hundreds of years. It lets you communicate with all other legal organizations through the contract law protocol, which is something you don't have available to you if you are just a decentralized autonomous organization. It kind of gives you all of these frameworks and ways to interface with other organizations, with the existing legal structure, and also gives legal protection to the people participating in it. So it comes with all of these advantages that you don't get if you are just setting up code running like the DAO or other decentralized organizations. In Germany, we've been working with lawyers here in Germany and in the US to kind of come up with a framework for the organization. We've decided on a traditional kind of membership-based organization where we have the limited liability organization with members joining. Each of the members is required to run a node in the network and participate in kind of voting for the board of directors and electing the people responsible. And well, the board is going to be making most of the decisions. If the members are really unhappy with the way the board is running, they always have the ability to recall the board and elect a new one. So it kind of puts the responsibility for ensuring that things develop in the hands of the members. And all of this is done under, according to the requirements of German law, under the basis of the Articles of the Association. So we've baked in some interesting things there. One thing we do want to do is move towards total decentralization. So right now we kind of have server-based decentralization where we have these selected nodes. We would like to move towards more complete decentralization when the legal framework is there to really support it. So part of the articles of the association say that we have to move towards that, just to keep us from getting a bit too comfortable with having fancy charitable organization and nice titles and comfy salaries from that.
Yeah, that's great. So, I have my next question is a little bit personal. So, how does a lawyer from Canada get involved with this super cutting-edge technology platform?
It's kind of a strange, rambling story. Like you said, everyone involved in blockchain kind of has their own story of hearing about Bitcoin and thinking it was crazy, and then slowly it starts to make a little bit more sense, and then slowly you wish you got involved a lot sooner. A friend of mine from Vancouver who we had weekly breakfasts, and we would talk about crazy internet stuff, including Bitcoin, moved to Germany, set up a company called Ascribe that was doing intellectual property on the blockchain. And he quickly realized that to do that, they needed to have a lawyer on staff. So they gave me a call, knew that I was interested, and I jumped at the chance. It was time to leave my old legal practice and and start something new. So sold everything, put my life in 2 suitcases, and went all in on blockchain.
That's a great story. So where do you see blockchain technology going in the future? What do you think you'll be working on? 5 years is pretty tough to say, but let's say 2 years from now.
2 years, I'd like to start to see IPDB being a core piece of internet infrastructure. I think we'll start to see governments not just regulating blockchain, but using it in regulation. I think we'll start to see a lot of interest in the developing world, where registries aren't really don't really exist for things like property, for things like identity. So kind of a leapfrogging effect, where this system that makes it very efficient to create stable, trustworthy registries is quickly adopted by these countries. Then a little bit beyond that, I think we'll start to see a lot of autonomous organizations. One thing that we're very interested in right now is what happens when AI starts to touch blockchain. How we can first start seeing a tokenized infrastructure for trading data to kind of feed these AIs. Lots of companies have data. Other companies have good algorithms, and how do we connect these markets, put the people with the data in touch with the people with the algorithms, and allow value to flow back and forth that way. I think blockchains and sort of a tokenized infrastructure will be very useful for that. And finally, I wonder what happens when AIs start to be the ones doing the trading themselves. That's one thing that I'm kind of concerned about. And will there be room for humans in that? Which is kind of another reason that I am interested in the governance aspect.
Yeah, at that point, they'll just have taken over everything, though. So
yeah, you don't have to have a Terminator style malice in the AI for it to be dangerous if it starts to be able to control the assets.
Yeah, definitely. That's a conversation for another day, though.
Yeah.
So for people that want to find out more about Interplanetary Database and get involved, what are the best online resources? Where do you guys hang out online?
We hang out on the website, ipdb.foundation. We've got BigChainDB Gitter that is pretty active with questions for people using BigChainDB. And you can always find us on Twitter. I'm at G McMullen. And other people involved in the project, another person to follow would be Trent McConaughey, who's the CTO of BigChainDB. He's always got lots of crazy ideas to feed people.
There you have it, the Interplanetary Database Foundation. I've got a few other videos that get pretty in-depth into governance of blockchain technologies and cryptocurrencies in general. So I'll link to those here. I encourage you to watch them if you enjoyed this one. All right, thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day.